Welcome back to the show, everybody. Today is a great day, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go down memory lane because I feel it's very important that we touch on some of these topics and conversations we've had. Today, we're going to talk with Bob Way, formerly of Ripple, a Ripple patent designer, as well as a former employee there. And it's a conversation we had 3 years ago. But it's so relevant to where we're going today with everything that we see. We know that the case is in a window to get a ruling. Hopefully, we're going to see clarity. And I think it's a great time to sit down and revisit. Bob is excellent at being able to explain a lot of how the XRP ledger works, how it is designed, and you are going to get a peep into the window of just how smart this man is. Shout out to Bob Way. Happy New Year to him and his family. I hope that we are able to get together and have a conversation here in 2023. This is the conversation from 2020, 2019 timeframe. So thank you to him and enjoy this conversation. Let's get started, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go.
Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. And before we get started, it's linked to, if you want to get private equity, the window will close on Ripple private equity, ladies and gentlemen, because we know that Brad Garlinghouse himself has told us they intend to have a public exit after they get clarity and a ruling on this case. If you want some, you can get it on Link2. And if you want other products, look at the list of the amazing products they have, along with Link2 themselves, awarded a license for an alternative trading system on the back end for all of this private equity. You need to get liquid, they're going to make it possible for you. I tell you, I don't know of another private equity firm that has literally been awarded a license to be able to do that for their customers. Pretty remarkable. You can get the Link2 shares there. You can also get PolySign, which I believe is going to be one of these businesses that helps put the technology we're all so excited about to work. And you know what else? I have a hard time seeing PolySign as anything other than the new iteration and version of the Depository Trust Clearing Corporation, which, by the way, happens to settle more than a quadrillion derivative products a year. So pretty excited about that myself. Not financial advice, but let's get to this interview with Bob Way and enjoy. Okay, so let's kick this ball off a little bit. Bob and I, when we talked earlier offline, we organized some topics to start with, okay? So one of the things we wanted to start with was clarifying the XRP ledger can handle all different kinds of transactions, guys, not just XRP. So Bob, do you want to start off with that and just run with that a little bit? And then I'm going to steer us to the thing we talked yesterday about important goods. We'll go there.
Okay, sure. So yeah, the thing that's different about the XRP ledger, and quite frankly, I hate calling it the XRP ledger because that makes it sound like it's only for XRP, but it's actually not. The XRP ledger actually started. The original project was called Bitcoin Without Mining, and Jed had proposed that there, and that's all it really was. It was trying to be. In that day, there was Bitcoin, there was Litecoin. They were just ledgers that passed this imaginary token from one person to another. And so Bitcoin started with mining, and Litecoin said, hey, we want to use a different hashing algorithm so more laptop people can participate. And then Jed said, why do we need to use this mining algorithm at all? Why can't we do something way more efficient? And so that's how the project started. But very quickly, once Arthur Brito, it really went Jed, David, Arthur, I think Eli, Chris, and Anna. That's how the company formed at the beginning. But so by the time Arthur came in, he brought in some ideas that were about exchanges. So in Bitcoin, there's this concept from the beginning that the primary use case of Bitcoin was going to be for payments. That's what everybody thought at the beginning. And so the idea was, I have dollars, I need to send payments to somebody who wants euros or Chinese yuan or Japanese yen. And so I'm going to take my dollars someplace and exchange them for Bitcoin, hence all of these exchanges you see. Then I'm going to send the Bitcoin to Japan, and somebody's going to exchange them for yuan. Exchange them for Japanese yen there.
Right.
And then they're going to send me back the goods I have, or the service. They'll turn on the service I paid for here. And so you see there's a series of steps. I exchange, I mail crypto, or send crypto, and then somebody else does an exchange, and then finally they give me what I wanted, what the payment was for to begin with, right? So again, that's what I call a circular business transaction. I'm giving something, and I'm receiving something, and so is everybody else in the transaction. But it's a series of sequential steps. And so what Arthur Brito did was say, hey, why don't we put the exchange on the blockchain as well, right? If we know this is going to be the primary use case, why don't we allow those two exchanges to happen? Why don't we allow people to post their orders on the blockchain itself, and we'll let the whole system handle this.
Right.
And then, of course, if you're going to do that, you have to have the other things that you're exchanging for, right? So if I want to hold dollars and exchange them for XRP, send the XRP, somebody exchange those for Japanese yen, then I need to have dollars represented on the blockchain, on the ledger, and I need to have yen represented on the ledger, and I need to have the offers, they call them on the ledger, or orders. I will call them orders for reasons we can get into later, to trade dollars for XRP and for XRP to yen. Those all have to be on the ledger, and if they are, then I can send a payment from one to the other.
Right.
And so that added this really, really more, it becomes a much more interesting ledger than most of the other things you'll see. Now a few of the newer ones have adopted this, and you can sort of trace, if you did a tree of lineages of things, almost all of the new ones that talk about other coins or things like doing a ICO on Ethereum.
Right.
Those ideas all originated with what you can already do on the XRP ledger.
Wow.
Same with the other tokens.
Wow.
And so along with that, Arthur also brought in this other idea of rippling. There was actually a system very early on, almost 10 years before Ripple, the company, started, called Classic Ripple Pay. And imagine that. Guess where the name came from?
Wow.
So that was the idea of nobody's special, really, right? We want to do a social network for money, but it's peer-to-peer. We're all among friends here.
Right.
So if I'm a community and I say, here's a whole bunch of people and I want to create my own currency, my own local currency, you'll see, especially California, other places, you'll have communities that have local dollars that to encourage money to circulate in their communities.
Sure.
And they trade one for dollars because somebody who's the issuer keeps a big stack of dollars and they keep the local currency, and then you can pass it around businesses, and when the businesses need the real dollars, the Federal Reserve dollars to trade outside of the community, they can swap them and do that.
Gotcha.
And so that's not uncommon, and it's been done with little pieces of paper for decades now.
Right.
And so what Ryan Fugger said, he came from an earlier community called Local Exchange Trading, which was operated that way. He said, hey, why don't we just expand on that and we connect this together? And so if I'm in those communities with taking these dollars, I could swap them, right? If I'm in making up names, the Pasadena, California community, and I'm using those local dollars, but I'm also in the Long Beach community and using their local dollars, why can't I swap one for the other for people, so people in Pasadena can swap with people in Long Beach, right? There's all sorts of things I could do without actually going to Federal Reserve notes.
Right.
And so that started an idea of what became the rippling system that says, hi, Brad, we're good friends now. You could owe me some money, right? You can't owe me $1 million. We're not that good of friends.
Right.
But you could owe me $50, right?
Right.
If I said, could you run out and buy this for me. Maybe I could owe you $50 or something. Maybe we're that close friends, right? But you've got a lot of other closer friends that you may have a similar relationship with that I don't know anything about. But maybe if I want to transact with them, I could say, hey, Brad, talk to your friend here, have him send me this. I'll give you some money. You cover it with him, right?
Yep.
And if we create a network of that, we can actually have liquidity without the need for the tokens, right? I could say, get this done because maybe somebody else that's one of your friends wants to buy something from me, and I don't ever hand you physical notes, right?
Right.
You just say, hey, this guy wants that. And I go, I'm good here. Credit me this with my account with you, Brad. And
Sure.
You say, that's awesome. And so a lot of those ideas started out with a guy with a notepad, just keeping up with the accounting here. And then they got automated with Ryan Fugger. So I encourage everyone to actually go, well, maybe after this, but go to classic.ripplepay.com. I believe that's there. And there's a very old video you can watch on the front page of that talks about this sort of social network for money.
That's incredible.
And so all of that is built into the XRP ledger. That's why originally we called it the Ripple ledger, because the whole point is these rippling payments across the system there. And so by calling it the XRP ledger, we're sort of focusing on only one narrow slice that it can do, and we're leaving out all the interesting stuff.
That's incredible. So to pick up on that and to go further into understanding that, before we do, what time frame was this around where you're talking about the Ripple Pay app and all that? What time frame was that for Ripple?
So this was before what's currently known as Ripple, the company, before OpenCoin. When Ryan Fugger created that.
Gotcha.
So what happened is Canada is a hotbed of really cool ideas like this. Canadian people are very, very civilized and social compared to the people I know. Like I'm in Texas, and everybody's very mind your own business. We take care of ourselves, right?
Yeah.
But the Canadian people are much more, we're a community, we're going to get together, talk, we're going to be in this. And so a lot of these really cool ideas came out of there. So I believe local exchange trading systems started in the late 70s as sort of what I call hippie money, right? We don't have any money, but we still want to trade stuff amongst ourselves.
Right.
And then later on, Ryan Fugger's, I think, was slightly preceding Bitcoin, probably early 2000s. It's all up on there, maybe 2007, something like that, or I guess that would be late 2000s. I went in the Wayback Machine and was looking at some of them there and looking at some of the history.
Sure.
But Hodor actually has a very nice history that he did probably mid last year.
Okay.
And he gives just a short version of that. And so that was there, and there are actually people still trading on it. It was just a community of people that set up, and then they set up several other different communities. One was called villages.cc, and they all started, essentially making their own money, actually making their own liquidity. They didn't actually issue any tokens.
Right.
And so on the Ripple, I'm always going to call it the Ripple ledger, but when I call it the Ripple ledger, nobody scream at me and go, Ripple's the company. I totally know that. But this is, the rippling system here that we're talking about now that preceded Ripple company. But, So on the XRP ledger, people have talked about an address, an XRP ledger address, which I'm going to naturally call a Ripple address, right? And so that represents a person or entity on the ledger.
Right.
And anybody can create a new one if you want. And then you can define what that entity is. So I can say this entity is me. If you want to send money to me, this represents Bob. So I have one that's Tilde Bob on the ledger, and you can find me and you can send me money. Right. But if I wanted to say I'm creating community money for Houston, I could make another address and call it Houston dollars, right? And then that would be an issuer address for dollars. And anybody who wanted to use Houston dollars could opt in to use that by creating what the ledger calls a trust line or an account for their Houston dollars.
Gotcha.
And then it would be up to me as the operator of that to make sure they could swap 1-for-1 with Federal Reserve notes if that was my intention.
Right.
And so if I wanted to create a crypto token the same way, I would do exactly the same thing, except I would say, I'm not swapping it 1-for-1 with dollars.
Right.
Once I create it, you guys decide what it's worth.
Yeah, this is interesting. If I could just jump in for a second, it seems like early on in the OpenCoin days in this whole Ripple Pay system, almost like they were addressing before the federal currency came in, the federal notes came in, it was I owe my soul to the company store, right? The little coal mining towns would make their own dollar. The workers couldn't go to another town because the dollar was only good in their town. And then here you guys take such an old problem and kind of readdress it and then start to build the innovation on top of that. And then obviously there's a whole lot more that can go on than just solving this particular problem.
Yes, and that's what became so fascinating. And sometimes people attribute genius where there's just purely technology, right?
Right.
And so this is sort of one of those cases where it's sort of discovered genius.
Right.
Where, Arthur came in and said, okay, well, we want to put the exchanges on the blockchain because what's the biggest problem with creating an exchange? It's trust, right? Mm-hmm. You're asking people to send a bunch of money to you and you're going to hold it and you're going to arrange these trades in a fair manner and make sure you're not favoring one person or another. And what's the common characteristic of people who use cryptocurrencies?
Right.
Complete and total paranoia, right?
Right.
And
that's the truth.
So, yeah. And so what I consider, I've used this, it's kind of a half joke, half truth lately. It's like, what if we put all the most paranoid people in the world in one big room and then said, what can we design that takes that paranoia and use it as a feature? Right. And, they're going to be paranoid, not going to trust each other. They're going to, how can we take advantage of that and do something really special? And so, the first thing, gambling, online gambling slot machines. People using Bitcoins, they don't trust anybody running an online slot machine because they're like, send us your money and we'll tell you if you win. Right. You go like, no, you're going to tell me I lose and you're going to have all the money. Why would I trust you?
Exactly.
Right? And so the people doing that went, oh, paranoia. What about a feature? How can we use that feature? So they invented a concept purely as a result of that called deterministic gambling. And it is a fascinating use of what's now called blockchain technology. And so basically what they did, I'm going to do this real quickly because I don't think anybody's heard this story.
Okay, great.
New people, is say, okay, let's take online poker, right? It's just a whole bunch of cards in order. You shuffle them and you put them in some random order. Right. And then we play this game according to the rules. Now, if you're an anonymous operator in the scenes, what's to stop you from reshuffling the cards in the middle or moving them around and get yourself a deal, right? Mm-hmm. And who's going to trust that? I'm paranoid. I'm not going to trust that.
Right.
So what the system did is say, okay, we're shuffling all the cards up. Now I'm going to hash that. I'm going to run this through a digest process that can tell you, exactly what the order was before we started playing the game. Right. And I'm going to tell you that in advance.
Right.
Now we're going to play this game and you get to make these decisions. And at the end, I'm going to show you the original deck and you can rehash it and see that I didn't change the cards around.
Nice.
And so then people went, oh, that's fair. I really want to gamble now.
Right.
And you go, it's still the odds are against you, right?
Right.
You're still going to lose money,
right?
But you're going to fairly use money. You're not going to unfairly use money.
Right.
Right. And so when you see blockchain technology, it's leveraging that sense of paranoia among people to say, I really don't trust those guys. but if we collaborate together, we can do some level of business. And so with the Ripple exchange built into the ledger, you can look and you can see all of the orders.
Right.
And when somebody takes something or sends a payment and it takes those orders, you could actually double check to make sure nobody was getting favoritism on this,
right,
or that sort of things. And then every time you send in money, it's issued to you on the ledger. The exchange operator says, here, I promise you publicly, where everybody can see on this immutable ledger, I owe you this money, as opposed to signing into any offline exchange where they only tell you on their own system that they promised to give you money.
Right, exactly.
And so there's a whole bunch of really, really awesome advantages of doing all of this stuff on the public ledger. And there's also some drawbacks of doing it on the public ledger. One, it's very public.
Right.
and traders love that, right? Traders are like, cool, I can dig into the ledger and figure out who I'm trading against. If there's two market makers and they're here, and I can try to figure out what algorithm they're using, and I'm trying to one up on that because I can see all of their orders being placed and canceled.
Yeah, of course.
And they're like, and it's fair. It turns out in the financial world, I'm dragging on and on. Feel free to stop me, Brad.
No, you're good. I want to hear the rest of this. Go ahead and close it out, and then we're going to move on to something. And we're drill down into that a little bit.
So in other financial worlds, there's Wall Street worlds. Now I'm getting where I'm not an expert on jargon, and other people might be. So forgive me if I screw up some of these terms.
Sure. Yeah.
But in I believe the New York Stock Exchange, there's a term called a specialist. That's a market maker that's in there to make sure something is always liquid, and they have priority over all other traders on the deals to buy and sell. So if you're a speculative trader on there, you're sort of one step back in the queue behind the specialist.
Yeah.
And if you're an arbitrager, same kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they're not a real fan, so they came to the Ripple ledger and went, "It's fair, it's flat, I like this. I can play this game."
Right.
And so that's awesome. So yeah, you can do a lot of things with the ledger, and you can define your own currencies. It doesn't have to be dollars, gold, euros, yen, pesos. You can say, "Hey, I'm creating flus." If
right. Yeah.
anybody
No, I get it.
That.
So yeah, no, I get it. So. All right, and to go further into that broad point of that you're making about the ledger, and that was great. I mean, I didn't understand the early dynamic of the Ripple Pay thing, so that was amazing to find that out where it kind of began there. But to come current to where the ledger is, you and I spoke yesterday, and we spoke about the fact that I'm a modest importer. I do some global importing for a little teeny company I have. About a beach product, and I was explaining to you that that's actually how I tripped up and realized that there was something here with XRP, because I had practical experience with Swift, and it's a nightmare, and it is, and I know firsthand, so I want people to understand, like you and I talked about with the broad range of what the ledger can do. I want to let everybody know in the stream that when I import goods from China and have something made, it's not as simple as making a payment, right? The goods have to be paid for, but the truth is, on the ledger, I could in fact put the entire series of events that need to take place as checkpoints on the ledger where there needs to be draws. Like, for instance, when I order something and place an order, I've got to put a third down. That could go on the ledger. They could have that marked and ready and release it when a certain amount of goods are put up and shown that it's been done. That can be accounted for like a smart contract on the ledger. That's correct, right?
That's correct.
And moving through that process, when I'm doing that, the next step would be I got to put a third down. They show me I have a third-party company that works for me over in China. I send them to the goods. They do a quality inspection, right? That gets approved. All of this, guys, can be on the ledger, by the way, these checkpoints. And then we're not done there, because then when I get done there and then the rest of the order's done, I pay the rest of the amount before the goods are released At that time, things move into a whole nother world of chaos, which is the freight forwarding world, right? And the customs inspections that have to happen. And believe me, guys, if you don't know about importing, it is time sensitive. Every bit of this stuff is very time sensitive. What Bob is saying is that they've graduated from what he just told you they've come to the ledger can handle every one of these events and release it at those timely dates. So now this whole ordering stuff overseas and everything just became as simple as me heating up soup in my microwave. It really is that straight ahead, isn't it, Bob?
It is. It's really, well, let's say that's definitely an awesome use case for this. Yes. And I wouldn't say it's trivial. Anybody can bang that out today.
Right.
But these are the ideas that people showed up in our office in 2013
right.
to say, hey, can we do this? And so all those discussions originated in the Ripple office. And so we did a version of that with the Singapore government. I can talk about it because there was press release
right.
about this on trade finance. And so one of the things related to what you're saying is, let's take just a step. I won't go into every detail of what you said there.
Yeah.
So at the very beginning of this, you order something from an entity in China. You have to put, a third down payment on that. Well, you can send that payment over the ledger. That's part of the permanent record.
That's right.
I made this payment. But the company on the other end is also promising you something.
Right.
That's an IOU. You can make that part of the record, and everybody can see that this company. So you have really three things that you could track at this moment. They're promising to send you the goods, which you can summarize as a type of currency, right?
Right.
It's essentially a bunch of stuff that
sure.
only you and that company might know what it means, but you could cryptographically prove that you both agreed to this. And then you sent them some money, which is on the ledger, and
right.
you've also promised to send them more money, which can be represented on the ledger as well. And that promise for you to send them more money is their asset in China.
Right.
And they could take that promise to the bank and actually borrow money against it. Or they could do that on the ledger there.
That's incredible, yeah.
And then so what happens is when you send your final payment, it's a circular transaction that clears out your promise to pay them because you have paid them.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And when you receive the goods, it clears out their promise to deliver the goods because they did. And so all of that can be tracked. So the Ripple Ledger becomes an awesome tool for very honest people to do business, right? And then you can look at these people, and if you've done some business with this Chinese company and you have your persistent entity on the ledger, other Chinese companies can look and see that you've been doing the business with this company. And when you call them and say, hey, I'd like to buy something from you, they know that your track record, that you're actually
legit
paying, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You're legit. And so that can be this sort of greater social network that can help you build your business. And so all of that's possible right now. Very little is being done right now, and which is why I'm having the study group here to kind of teach people that it can be done and what these kind of ideas are, and that you don't need to ask permission. You can just do it.
Right. Yeah, understanding it to that depth is more clarity for me. I can tell you that. And I'm sure it is for a lot of people in this room. Guys, over 400 people in the room. Please hit the like and subscribe for us. We really appreciate it. So, yeah, and just to be clear, too, in moving outside of the goods into manufacture, just touching on the freight forwarding industry, because I know Chris Larson has used that for an amazing analogy to what's taking place with the Internet of Value. If people aren't familiar with freight forwarding, there's an enormous amount of documentation that happens there. ISF documents, for customs and these kinds of things. And you have to remember, it's customs coming out of the country you're buying the goods and customs coming into the country you're taking the goods into. So, there is an enormous amount of things that happen there. And like I said, those things are time sensitive. So understanding that those particular things can also be put in a bundle or a contract or as a transaction as itself on the ledger is fascinating to me. And I can only imagine how just looking at the shipping container industry and the global importing and stuff, how that again is going to get another facelift, because as we know, the shipping container industry before the shipping container, and before the massive compliance and everybody uniform, making all their ports the same, all their trucks the same, to be able to carry a certain size container that has a certain amount of goods in it. Prior to that was just things on a shelf or on the floor of a ship. And then it increased that industry by 700 to 800%, otherwise known as the Jevons paradox. We talked about this yesterday, right? So this is really important. This is important.
And the reason I didn't want to, squash what you said earlier, but when we talk about trade finance and these supply chain kind of things,
yeah,
when you hear in the news companies like R3, right?
Right.
And any of the companies talking about enterprise Ethereum to build new use cases, they're working hard on a lot of these cases. I went to a Houston blockchain initiative, or group of companies lecturing on what they're doing, some in the oil field industry for these type of use cases. There's a lot of people working on those collaborative paper pushing things. Right. And so the Ripple technologies like ILP are synchronization technologies. So there's going to be steps. If you look at the state changes in geeky terms of like freight forwarding there.
Right.
It's moving from one person to another. And right. I'm giving you this goods, but you're only giving them to you if you do something else, like you're recording on the ledger that I gave to you. So again, circular little two-way transactions that we're tracking, and they move all along. And some of those require payments, right?
Right.
And so let's say we move all of the goods from China all the way to you.
Right.
Now you promised to make a payment, and let's say there's a lot of younger people that I'm not sure have heard the term COD, right? Right. It used to be the postman used to bring you a package and you go, it's COD, hand me some money and I will hand you this package.
Exactly.
COD is cash on delivery, right?
That's right.
And so the same freight forwarding company could go, Brad, look, here's the thing, COD, give me some money. But you could do that digitally through Ripple. You say, like, as I sign, I'm receiving the package, the goods that I ordered, it automatically releases the funds to pay for them, right? And there's no way you can actually claim the goods to release them. So we speed up the business cycle there, and that brings your Jevons paradox. We're doing more transactions with less overhead on them.
Exactly.
And we're making it easier, and we're just building the ecosystem by doing a lot more business much faster.
It's amazing to me because that's exactly what we're seeing. And just, pointing to, because we're talking about shipping goods or what have you, it's amazing because that was just what they did with the shipping container and making the ports universal around the world, increasing 700 to 800% in production and shipping goods, which is why we can get so many nice gadgets these days in 2 days or less, right? So it's pretty fascinating to know that it's getting ready to get a second facelift, a digital facelift. And I'm excited to see what that does to that industry as well as the whole world. So, okay, I think we got that, really drilled down on that in a good way. So is it cool if we move to the next thing, Bob?
Sure.
Okay, so the next order or topic here is when you were on Cobb's show, you had made a great description of how the or an understanding of how XRP is going out and working in these smaller, more exotic corridors. Now, these are things we've also known from Miguel Viez, as well, and other people at Ripple have talked about these areas as well. But I just wanted to highlight it because you have a certain way of communicating that is just really casually brilliant. I mean, it's, you're a very smart man anyway, but your ability to communicate with the layman is just absolutely bar none above anyone else I've ever talked with of your level and caliber of intelligence for sure. So looking at the next topic, we see the lowest cost path, understanding the shift for market makers from the direct path to the bridge path. Now, I want you to really kind of revisit this because I felt like it was so important because I feel like people don't understand why we're 29.30 today, right? And what is this mean when they go out? So can you talk about winning over those market makers a little bit in those areas and how that does create leverage by bringing the utility from the traditional path to the bridge path?
Mm-hmm. So what I'm talking about is, we talked about the rippling payments earlier here.
Yes.
Is that if you're trying to send money from Alice to Bob, or Bob's anywhere in the world, there's going to be different ways to get the money from Alice to Bob. So just in lay examples, I could go to my bank and say, wire, that's a bank buzzword, wire the money to Bob. I could go to Western Union and say, hey, I want to move this money to Bob, have them pick it up here. I could use Bitcoin and move the money to Bob. I could use the Ripple ledger. There's a bunch of different ways, and we call those paths in the Ripple ledger. And they're all, by default, competitive. So if I go into my Ripple wallet and say, type in Bob's address, and Bob wants, 10,000 Japanese yen.
Right.
That doesn't mean anything to me. I had to look up, some yen. That's not very much.
It's not a lot of money, yeah.
$100 or, in something like that. But once that, it's going to tell me how much that cost to me. But it's also going to find the lowest price. So I can compare every path personally. Well, now I'm Alice. This is always weird in the conversation, right? Because I'm the sender. Right. But if I want Bob to receive that many Japanese yen, I just see the price in dollars, or what I hold. I see it in XRP. I can this. Right. And so the logic of the system can compare every path by cost to me, what's going to be debited from my account. And so which one do I want to use? Well, always the lowest cost one. Always. Why would I want to be debited more? Every other thing else is equivalent. It's all going to take 4 seconds, no matter which way I do it.
Correct.
I want the one that costs the least. So that's the lowest cost path. And so what happens is people want to participate. Can you hear the bird?
Sorry I love the bird. Are you kidding? It's awesome.
And I apologize for clearing my throat.
Oh, man, no, it's all good.
Sinus days.
I have them too, man. The pollen's incredible right now where we're
at. What's happening is when you hear RippleNet, right, and you see Ripple, the company press releases, is there's a great team of people going out and talking to bankers, talking to money services businesses, remittance companies, talking to exchanges, all bringing them on to the ledger.
Right.
But every one of those companies has their own personal reasons for doing it. They're not coming in going, oh, Ripple, you're the leader. We're behind you 100%. Just tell us what to do, and we're doing exactly what you're doing. They're all coming in saying, if I'm a remittance company, they go like, I'm having trouble getting good prices from Mexico to the Philippines.
Right.
Can you help there? And then the team goes, let's see if we can help there. Or, if there's a corridor and they're saying we need more traffic, can we help you find more traffic? And they go out and they beat on doors and they try to help build the ecosystem. And so as you talk to banks, they go, here's what our problem is. How do we do this? And if a bank goes, okay, I want to go, I want to send payments from, and I'm making these up. Please don't,
right.
Everybody overanalyze and say this, but I'm using locations that I've heard from press releases, and the words coming out of company things you see. So like Canada comes up a lot, right?
Right.
You have some of the Asian things. So say Thailand, Siam Bank comes up occasionally.
Yeah.
So let's say you talk to some Canadian banker and they go, we have this community of people from Thailand that needs to send remittance payments here. It's really expensive for us. How can you help? And so the same bank might be saying, okay, we're also sending payments into Mexico and into Europe. How can you help? And the same paths are not always the same technology, or that the different paths are not always the same technology.
Right.
So if you're going from Canadian dollars into euros, that's a pretty high volume corridor with very tight markets. But Canadian dollars into Thai baht is much lower volume, and that's an exotic corridor.
Right.
Here. So if you look at this and you go, oh my God, they're going to open up payment corridors from Canadian dollars to euros, and it's all going to run through XRP. You're like, probably not. I mean, not at first, right? They already have accounting relationships. They know each other as banks. They're trusting each other, but they don't have relationships with trusted banks. The Canadian banks don't want to hold a giant pile of Thai baht in Nostro accounts. They just want to be able to deliver payments for their customers. And so you'll see that over and over again as you talk to people here. And it's those exotic corridors that work great through XRP. And now let me take it, we talked about this a little yesterday, so you know where I'm going here.
Sure.
A lot of people will jump on and go, oh, good, Canadian banks buying and holding XRP. And not necessarily, right?
Right.
So in order to make that path from Canada to Thailand, there may already be a marketplace trading Canadian dollars for XRP. And there's traders, market makers trading Canadian dollars to XRP in some form of an exchange. And where does that exchange hold their Canadian dollars? Well, in a Canadian bank already, right? The exchanges aren't taking piles of paper and like locking them in a wall safe. They're keeping the money in a bank account in a bank.
Yeah, exactly.
And so if you're that bank and you go like, well, these guys already have money. I can get money to that exchange very fast. I just credit their account, right?
Right.
So if you're a sales team, who are you gonna like target? You go like, oh, there's an exchange. Who are they banking with? Let's talk to those bankers.
There you go.
Right? Because the bankers can get money to the exchange in the blink of an eye. They just credit the account.
Right.
Then the payment can run through the exchange over there. Now in Thailand, where's the exchange keeping their money? Their Thai baht in a bank.
In a bank.
Sorry.
No, it's totally
There's
cool.
my lovely wife, my lovely parrot in the background.
How you doing, Janet? And it's Pacheco, right?
And so, so there is this fast path that you can get to there to make that work for these exotic corridors. Now, once you can reach Thailand, you can reach it from Canada. Well, I could reach it from Mexico. I could reach it from Brazil. I can reach it from a lot of other places. And then once I can reach Thailand from Brazil, well, hey, now I can reach Brazil from Canada, right? And so all of these other paths start to build on each other. And so that's what I don't think is reported enough in the community. They're saying, oh, they're only doing this thing, but they're not seeing when you, I wish I had a whiteboard, can't draw, but whenever you hear a location, like Thailand,
right,
or Brazil or Mexico using this, consider all of those locations connectable to every other location through XRP with very little work.
Right.
And that they won't be happening on the first day, but the goal is to make it very easy. The first corridors are really, really hard, right? And let me explain why they're hard. Because you have two different people that have to work together to make something happen. And they have to negotiate with each other, and they have to talk about terms, and they have to do this. But once those two ends are established, when I want to add a third party in, all the work on the other side is already done.
Right.
So the third party only has to deal with themselves internally, and then the rules are already known of how to connect on. So there's only half as much work to add on subsequent parties than there was to establish the first corridors.
Absolutely.
And
yeah, no,
so
to add to your
Go
point,
ahead.
I know Miguel Viez has made the point as well, too, just to talk about seniorage that he's talked about to add to your point in those difficulty of starting up some of those small exotic corridors. Seniorage, guys, is where they come in and they say, the market makers say, look, I'm interested, but, currently right now the spread might be costing me a little on the XRP side at the moment. And the senior age is when they say, look, it's in our best interest as Ripple XRP to incentivize you. We'll cover the difference of the spread if you come onto the network. Because again, the word of the day is Javon's paradox, right? Because Ripple understands clearly what's going to take place here. We're going to make you more efficient. We're going to save you an enormous amount of cost. You're going to spread some of that saving cost to your customer, and you're absolutely going to 10x or 100x your business flow in that area. And now that you're digital, by the way, anybody with a phone can participate because there wasn't a bank even here in this small corridor to even do business with you.
Exactly. And so a lot of the misunderstandings or misconceptions I hear people talking about is, okay, this bank's coming on and it's going to just spike the price in this particular market.
Right.
And so we talked about that a little bit, the lowest cost pathfinding.
Right.
And I've seen people do analysis on how they think it works, but really the Ripple system takes all of the market liquidity into account before Alice sends the payment.
Right.
So let's say, we're trading around, 30 cents the dollar on XRP, and I want to send a whole bunch here, and that amount is going to move the market.
Right.
It will tell me as Alice before I do that what the cost is, and so when I go, I need to send this much money. It's not going to show me it's at 30 cents because that's what the last tick in the market is.
Right.
It's going to show me my end cost is going to be 43 cents because I'm sending so much, it's pushing up the market.
Right.
And then Alice is going to go, that's too much. I'm not going to send that payment, right?
Right.
Let me find another pathway.
Exactly.
And so what Ripple as the company has to do is when they know they're going to open up a new corridor, they have to find somebody to post that liquidity into the markets so it doesn't do that. Because as soon as people send payments, they want to get the market rate. They want to see it being cheaper than the path. And because otherwise they're just going to route around it.
Right.
And so, that's kind of going on behind the scenes. You have to say, but market makers love that, right?
Yeah.
If you go and you go, hey, there's going to be this, we expect this much payment flow. If you post this much liquidity up, you can trade it back and forth, and you can generate so much revenue off of essentially the fees, spreads that you're charging on the payments, and you're going to make money. And they go, we're in. How do we do that? Right. That's what they'll do, that business all day long. That is their business.
That is their business. That's right.
And so, that's 99% of what attracts them to the market. And then if you say, oh, but it's still slightly more costly, these other things may be a little bit of efficient, you can use that seigniorage, which is a fancy foo-foo word.
Right. Yeah.
Basically, it means, okay, somebody created this token and has some. How are they going to use it? Right.
Right.
So you can say, hey, you're there, you're posting liquidity, but it's not a good enough price. It's going around.
Right.
How about you post a little better price, and for everything that goes by, we'll give you a little bonus in here to, as somebody called it, the suction.
Right.
Get the pathways flowing,
totally.
Get the money moving in there, and then it becomes self-sustaining.
Yeah.
So, that is a really good use case for the XRP that Ripple has. They're not selling it into the market here and pushing the price down.
Right.
They're using it to suck a payment flow from the other competitive paths through XRP.
Right. Right. That's important to understand that. I know that a lot of people do not understand that. I'm so glad we're doing this right now.
And people will totally misunderstand what I'm saying in there. But that's okay. I'll say it again later.
Yeah.
But this idea of liquidity is very, very foreign to most people. Because you see, you're holding your stack of XRP, and you see a price like 30 cents today. And depending on how big your stack is, let's say you wanted to buy a house. So you want to, sell a couple $100,000 worth of your XRP out of your stack right now.
Right.
Well, if you did that all at once, you're going to put downward pressure on the price.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that amount of downward pressure you put on the price determines what you're really going to get. And if it's a big enough thing, and you try to sell it all at once, you won't get 30 cents. You might get on average 28 or 27 or 25, right? And so that's your real value if you liquidated these positions here. Now, if we have a bunch of payment volume running through there and market makers posting a lot more depth in the book at 30 cents, when you go to liquidate your money to buy the house, you're going to get 30 cents. You're not going to get 27 cents.
Right.
And so people go like, oh, that didn't make the price go up. Well, yeah, it did. It's just not posted in the last tick price. It's posted in how much money that you can actually, how liquid is it? How can you sell this right now for what you want?
Absolutely. So talking about liquidity before we move to the next thing, it's so important for people to understand the liquidity business because the utility needs to come from the same place that the utility or liquidity is coming from. These market makers that are coming onto the network are going to bring utility and liquidity from the same place. And that's what's so important. Another thing to talk about here and to remind ourselves as, retail investors or whatever, is that there is at some point, there is a threshold that you cross where XRP eventually at some day, whenever that day is, becomes so liquid, right, that it becomes the chosen path, period. It isn't even a question anymore. It's fastest, it's liquid, it's digital, it's immediate. You know what I mean? And so I think it's important to understand that there's a threshold that we cross at some point where, as a commodity or a digital asset, that's exactly what you have here. This enormous liquid asset that can be used anytime for anything, anywhere. And that's the path I feel like Ripple is on right now. Yesterday we talked, I know Brad Garland in the house has said, you got to crawl, walk, run. I said, I believe we're walking. And I think you had agreed with that right now.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. We're walking here.
Yeah, we're walking.
And so, yeah, it's the utility. When people say, oh, what utility has, think value, right?
Right.
And so, but you also have to expand how you think about value to how other people think about value and these interesting ideas. So you have the Jobam's paradox kind of thing here. So, but we're going to use you as your example and China here with your particular business here. So let's say we get these payment flows over Ripple and all of these other things in some form of blockchain tracking your supply chain in there. So what's happening is what is the actual utility? Well, the utility is value created for people. And who are the people? There's you and the person on the other end in China, the merchant or vendor that you're buying from.
Right.
So let's look at what value is created. So first on the merchant side there, they're getting their payments faster and easier and more transparent there. And really they're the biggest source of value if you want to go into a new business here.
Yeah.
The merchant in China has the highest markup, right?
Right.
So if you're trying to sell something to that person to help him do business faster, he has the most to gain.
Yeah.
Because he wants to do, instead of 10 transactions a week, he wants to do 100 transactions. And if you can help him do 100 transactions, he's willing to pay you a chunk of that, right?
That's right.
So he's creating value. They are being able to do faster business and reach more of the world. How many people know how to get payments into China now? That's a niche specialty thing. But what if you could do it? Not just Brad. And so that's building that person. They are seeing the utility value with this flows. What does it mean to you on your end, Brad? Well, weird source of value come in. And that payment now makes it from you all the way to China in 4 seconds.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
What does that mean? It means you can pay your bills later.
Right.
Right. You don't have to send the money, a week in advance to hope it gets there in time to meet your obligation.
Oh boy.
Right?
Yeah.
Or 2 weeks in advance. Yeah. And you don't have to pay that 2 weeks in advance and then realize, oh, now I have a cash flow shortage. I have to go charge something to my credit card before I get this paid here to pay it all back. You can say, oh, I'm not paying you this. I'm using my own money. I'm avoiding that interest. So now you have new value, and that's utility. That's what we talk about. I'm going to charge my headphones tend to run out of batteries.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, no, absolutely. I mean, you make a great point. You just described exactly what happens when I'm doing transfers. That's exactly right. Your cash is tied up. You end up using a credit card, and then there's interest rate that you're paying on that credit card. This is all stuff you wouldn't have to do on the ledger. You know what I mean? It's immediate. The transaction happens. Not to mention, at the end of the run of dealing with Swift, of not knowing where your money is, and believe me, when you're sending tens of thousands of dollars to the other side of the world, it is not a comfortable feeling knowing that I gave it to the bank, they gave me a number, and I don't know what's happening for the next 8 days. Because I've had to take as long as 8 to 10 days to get my money over there. And then there's another surprise waiting for you when it gets there. There's an exchange rate difference on the money after 8 days. The money spread isn't the same 8 days later, and they're going to make you pay it. They're going to make you pay the difference.
Yeah, it's very rare that you send a payment like that and they go, the market moved in your favor.
Yeah, I've never had it happen, Bob. I've never had it happen. Never. Yeah.
Yeah. And on the Ripple system, it does allow for that. It's very, very interesting.
It is interesting.
If you go to send a payment, a cross-currency payment on Ripple, and in between when you press the button to say send the money and you're looking at the price there,
right?
If the market moves in your favor in that 4 seconds, you get the better price. And, it'll end up going, oh, here's what you actually paid. It's less than what you thought. And you go like, hey, awesome.
Yeah, it's so exciting to me, honestly, to understand it from a practical, application from myself in my own life. It really is exciting to see how that will change. Okay, so I think we can move on to the next thing, which kind of crosses up. We're crossing into that now. So the next area was RippleNet, right? The 200 plus live, like Marcus Treacher has said, 200 of the largest banks and financial payment providers in the world that are already on RippleNet live, just not live on the ledger, which is an amazing statement in its own right. Now, we want to talk about RippleNet and the amount of utility, as we just broke down what that was, that will come onto the ledger at some point of those 200 plus, which happen to be synchronized. And before we get into that, guys, I want to thank everybody. Over 500 people in the stream. Please hit the like and subscribe. We're hanging out with Bob Way, and it is a really, really great hang. So, Bob, let's talk about, because I had been telling people for a long time, and I shared this with you yesterday, thank goodness. And I had been telling people, I had not been able to get my mind around anything other than some kind of a price adjustment or a price set due to the nature of that much synchronized utility jumping onto the network at one time. Now, understanding the Jevons paradox, right, what we talked about yesterday, and how that actually applies to the method of what Ripple's doing. I understood it to the shipping industry and all of those things prior to that in the Industrial Revolution. But looking at it now, I start to tend to see the path is more like Jevons paradox, like what you're saying. If you're offering a discounted, more efficient rate to these market makers and liquidity providers, they can pass the cost on to the customer. The customers will then 10x or 100x the volume of that area because everybody's going to go where it's cheaper and faster. So exactly. I think I follow where that is, but can you drill down on that and the amount of utility moving to that network? I would think at some point, whether it's even if it isn't a price set or a price adjustment, just the level of that daily volume entering the ledger must have some kind of major impact on the price reflection that everybody's looking for on XRP.
And there's a lot of I've detailed a lot of this on XRP chat inside my book club. There's a thread called about the patent, Let's Talk. I think that's the name of it there. Because people were asking about it, and that's exactly what the patent's about. And there's a little bit of misconception that I've seen in the community about that idea of, click, we're all doing XRP here now.
Right.
And really, I don't expect that to happen that particular way, because what's happening is everybody on RippleNet is solving a particular problem right now.
Right.
They had a first step which was a particular problem they want to solve. And now they're looking at what's the second problem they want to solve and the third problem they want to solve. And they want to build. These are not, they call like blue sky projects.
Sure.
We're going like, we're in, we're betting the whole bank, we're all
Right.
changing the world in money. They're going, we are very, the one thing we are as these brand name banks is we have to be seen as stable and rational and predictable here. And what we're trying to do is be more efficient, be more secure, lose less payments, be more compliant. And that's all what the RippleNet technology does. And the synchronization does that. It assures that they don't lose any money. They don't send any payments that they then have to go, oh my God, you're going to be fined for this. Let's send it back. There's a lot of compliance rules and crazy things that go on.
Sure.
And so they're busy solving those problems now. But at the same time, they have a highest priority and they have a second priority and a third priority and a fourth priority. And once they have Ripple technology on board and they're connecting to their banking systems, they can work on the other priorities and they can say, oh yeah, well, for example, and I'm going to pick on Canada again,
Sure.
Because they show up a lot. There's really only 5 big banks in Canada. This is the way I understand it. Canadians, please call me an idiot. But in general, there's only 5 big banks. Whereas the U.S. has like tens of thousands of banks.
Sure.
Here. So, and the 5 civilized big banks in Canada can get together and you go like, our systems would be better if we synchronized them. For all Canadians doing Canadian dollar to Canadian dollar or, transactions from one bank to another. Hey, let's make that go faster. Let's not lose any payments. Let's give them additional features. And they can all do that.
Right.
And then you go, oh, that's like turning the switch. That's going to make XRP go up. You go like, no, because they're doing Canadian dollars to Canadian dollars.
Right.
There's no reason for them to go Canadian dollars to XRP, pay a spread to some trader, and then go XRP to Canadian dollars and pay us. They're just generating fees and costs where they don't need to. And the way I talk to people is like, say you're sending money to somebody else who banks at the same bank.
Right.
There's zero chance that payment's going to flow through XRP.
Exactly.
Because they're just going to debit this account, credit that account. It's going to happen instantly, and they're done.
Exactly.
And so you have to look which ones are really provide utility value of going through XRP, and that initially is going to be 2 exotic corridors here.
Right.
And so, but these same banks that are on RippleNet doing these, giant payments that would be totally illiquid through XRP anyway.
Right.
From say Canadian dollars to euros or Canadian dollars to US dollars or those sort of things. They now have the technology to reach the exotic corridors. All they have to do is say, now it's time to do that.
Exactly.
And like I showed, every time there's I hate using these words because I know this is a US-centric word and I'm offending somebody.
Right. Yes,
somewhere.
I get it. Yeah.
But there's a US term called balkanization, which means we've divided up these industries into different slices here. And apologize to people in the Balkans if that sounds as a slam.
Yeah.
But right now, if I send a wire from my bank, it has to be delivered at a bank. Right. There's no way for a wire from my bank to be delivered by Western Union, or that's odd and rare. Right. And if I send a payment from Western Union, it has to be delivered by another Western Union representative. I can't just stick it in your bank somewhere else in most cases.
Exactly.
And if I send a Bitcoin payment from here, it has to go to some other Bitcoin place. There's no mix and match. There's no network effect between those different tiers or different slices of the industry. Right. And so what RippleNet really does is say, we have some standard procedures and settlement ways that will work for anybody. Exactly. And so now we can say, hey, we just put this corridor on into Mexico. Let's, people know there's remittance payments going into Mexico. I forget who the other end of the corridor is there. But now you could actually go, hypothetically, and talk to a Canadian bank, because we've been using them as examples, and go, hey, Canadian bank, you can reach into Mexico, even though it's not another bank, but we've had a lot of trial and success for this, and they're actually delivering to banks in Mexico through this exchange, which is a licensed on the Mexican banking, the SPAY network, to deliver instant payments in there.
Right.
And if you use the XRP corridor, you can actually reach them without really doing much additional configuration on your integration there. How about we give that a try, right? And now we've connected these otherwise to separate whole ecosystems, and it worked. And so that's what I expect turning the switch is going to be. It's going to be connecting banks to these other payment service providers that are already using the XRapid product and going through XRP now, and increasing the volume. And then I'm talking about this because I want people who want to do business and want to make money, and they're hearing this. I want to give people ideas to do stuff, right? Like now.
Yeah.
So when you hear any discussion like, oh, we're sending remittance payments into Mexico. One, awesome, right? But if you hear about a one-way flow like that, that's also not so awesome, because you're sending money into Mexico, but in the XRP markets, you're actually consuming the pesos at the destination, right? You're going to use them all up, because there's nobody sending money out of Mexico. So what that means, if you're looking for new business opportunities, there's cheap money flowing out of Mexico to anywhere else in the world, right? Mm-hmm. You can go, there's traders are desperate for, how do we get Mexicans here to send the other way? Because to a trader, they want to go back and forth. Right. Yeah. They don't want to be wiring money and purchasing pesos elsewhere and doing this. And so every time you hear a corridor open, you think, oh, that's another business opportunity for going the other way, which may actually get me at least a bootstrap discount on funds without even asking any permission, right? To go anywhere else. And so the benefit of going through XRP, like if I traded US dollars to Mexican pesos and I wanted to balance that flow with pesos, I can only do that with pesos back to dollars, right? So I have to balance it along that one corridor. But if I have money flowing into Mexico from anywhere in the world through XRP, I only need to balance that with money flowing out of Mexico to anywhere in the world through XRP. Right. And that becomes a much easier balance, and the profit margins go like that to market makers when you balance the flows.
Absolutely. Yeah. So and just to really re-highlight the point, guys, like what he's talking about is really, for the first time in the history of mankind, is private individual networks, like whether it be a remittance company or a central bank or a coin exchange. For the first time in the history of mankind, these companies can actually cross into each other's network to settle a single transaction. That's where we're headed, and that is amazing. And it also seems like, too, it gives more leverage for Ripple or XRP itself to gain the liquidity in a more consistent, stable fashion, it would seem like to me. And if we could, I think that moves us to the next thing, is stability, right? How important is stability? Because we're talking about these market makers out here, Bob, but I mean, I've heard Miguel Viez say, the market participants don't care if the market's volatile or not. It's like, and I get it, they don't, but it's the market makers and the liquidity providers who bet your bottom dollar care how volatile it is, because they don't want to lose on that 3 to 4 seconds on that rail.
Right. And it's stability is, words are really, really hard, especially for me. I don't have that great a command of the English language. But
build that boat for two, Bob.
So one thing I want to point out is stability is not the opposite of volatility.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Right.
Volatility means up and down like this. Stability kind of means horizontal.
Right.
And we don't really, it's not in my personal self-interest, your self-interest, Ripple, the company's self-interest, for the price to go totally horizontal.
Right.
If it goes horizontal with increasing liquidity, that is a benefit, right? Because the the last tick price and the apparent price, if I sell a bunch, start to converge to that.
Exactly.
But boy, up is better, right? And so what we really want to see is to reduce this kind of volatility to this kind of volatility.
Exactly.
But we want to put that on an upward trend. Right? So we want it less volatile, but we want it continually increasing in value.
Exactly.
And so that's what we want to look for ways to do that. And people always ask, this is the whole patent thread on there. And there's what I call causation and correlation arguments that you can make. And so the patent thread makes causation articles. It's the most pessimistic way of looking at this particular case. And what it says is there exists this group of people called market makers, and they're very competitive, and they're there to profit on two-way flows and making fees.
Exactly.
They don't profit on the increasing price. That's not their job.
Right.
Their job is at any given price to make sure there's liquidity so people can sell, and their apparent price is the last tick price.
Right.
And so that's their job, and they're happy making money at any price. And so what we want to do is increase the competition there.
Right.
Because those people need to buy XRP to participate in the market.
That's right.
And though it looks like they're trading every day, they're not holding and they're not consuming XRP. They absolutely are.
Right.
Because if you're a market maker, you're buying XRP and then immediately selling it.
Right.
And then you're buying back what you sold, and then you're trading back and forth.
Right.
But you're not net selling XRP ever.
Right.
You're actually net accumulating XRP in this market as it's going back. So every time you hear somebody talk about a new market maker coming into the ecosystem, think, wow, a guy he brought in a whole bunch of cash and he took nothing out. Right. So he consumed XRP and he's pushing up the price.
Exactly.
And the more of those people you can get to compete for real live profits. And it sounds like I'm saying they're pillaging the payment senders for profits, but it's the Jabam paradox thing.
Exactly. Absolutely.
And waiting for this to connect back up. Come on, other earpiece.
No, and good. While you're doing that, I'll touch on something too. And it's not to say that when you were talking about stability and volatility, and those things too, I completely agree with what you're saying. It doesn't mean that we won't see, like you had mentioned before, some kind of FOMO, spiky market ranging up in price. There's always going to be psychological price points, people that sell or get out or this kind of notion. But it's really, the way I understand it is imagine being in a pool that's 10 foot deep, but nobody's actually swimming currently past 6 feet. Mm-hmm. So it can move and the market can move and there can be this ranging action, but as long as we're not dipping into a negative equity to the liquidity that's currently there, that's the situation.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how I understand that too.
Mm-hmm. And so that's what we want in general. And I'm not saying anybody is manipulating it to make that the case,
of course
but
not.
That's best case scenario You want it not particularly volatile, and you want it trending upward.
Right.
Because, that's best for everybody. And then, so what I looked at is, are there ways to do that? And that's what the patent's all about. And so the interesting thing is if you can create that configure. So first you have to say, how do we draw people in to make the XRP path cheaper?
Right.
Right. And then how do we increase the flows there? And as we increase the payment volume through that, we're increasing the profit for market makers, which brings more market makers in there, which are consuming XRP, which is pushing the price up, right?
Yeah.
And as it becomes more liquid, another interesting thing happens. If you're doing a lot of international business and you're sending, if you're holding dollars, which are an awesome currency, I hold dollars too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Big fan of dollars.
Yeah.
Send more my way.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if I'm doing a trade with China in yuan, I'm having to convert that there. And even if XRP path is cheaper, I'm converting for dollars XRP to yuan.
Right.
That's two conversions, which So each conversion is less than half as expensive as a direct dollar to you on path.
Got it.
Otherwise, it wouldn't be cheaper, right? But I'm still doing twice. If I was holding XRP, I only have to do half of that. So I only have half of the fees. And I also only have half of the fees to my people sending me money too, right?
Yeah.
So then you start to think, well, should I personally, instead of holding my dollars, which I love, should I hold XRP or accept payments in XRP? Because now I know it's a little volatile, but it's trending upwards over time.
Right.
And I have less cost on that. Puccini, stop it. Sorry, guys.
No, it's awesome,
he's
man.
very loud when he can't get his sunflower seeds. and so help, Janet.
I'm loud when I can't get my dinner too. I'm gonna tell you that, or breakfast. I tend to get a little voicey.
Here,
you know.
Come here. Stop it. So really, I've said that other places, and people thought I was crazy. Everybody is contemplating banks turning on the switch and spiking the price.
Right.
And quite frankly, banks are really smart about money. They know apparent costs in this, and they know about thin markets, and they don't want to do that. And there's not a case that I personally see. Janet, where'd you go?
And, to your point, Bob, while you're talking to Puccini, I think the banks have learned a valuable lesson from an earlier industry, like we talked yesterday, the record industry, and understanding what Napster, like being the Bitcoin of the music industry there, has shown everybody that Napster decentralized the entire music industry single-handedly, right?
Exactly.
I think the banks have learned a valuable lesson by that, and it said, you know what, we're going to get in on the front of this thing and make ourselves a player. We're not going to thumb our nose to it like the record companies did. We're not going upside down. Yeah,
but I hear, in the community, there's talk from people. I don't like to, I really don't like to slam other people's theories here.
Of course, yeah.
But I just want to, say this is the way I understand it. There isn't a case that I've ever heard of, even contemplated, that goes, oh, Ripple's going to transfer a bunch of XRP to the bank, and that's going to be worth money, and then the banks are going to do this to do a big spike in the market price,
right,
and make a bunch of money. People go to jail for stuff like that.
Exactly.
And most of the decisions in banking are made by, can I get promoted, or might this get me fired?
Right.
And if you move on to, is it going to get me thrown in jail? That's like
it's a whole nother ballgame.
Tier of no, right? And so no amount of, there's these backroom deals going on to, profit by, artificially spiking
the price. Right.
It's like, nobody wants to go to jail.
Yeah.
Really. And everybody's trying to legitimately create value for people like you. We're trying to make business transactions happen faster, and organically that value gets spread around the ecosystem, and it benefits people, XRP holders there.
Absolutely.
Like Ripple, the company.
Absolutely. So I think this is a beautiful segue for us to move into the next point, which is understanding the 55 billion escrow. So I just did a recent interview, really great interview with SPQR Media, who are fantastic, with Lee on that show. It's a team of them over there, and they do some really nice work. And he was remarking about the fact that escrow, and you and I touched on this a little bit yesterday, so it's for the audience, obviously, to bring them up to where we've been, that the escrow can be pre-allocated in contracts. So an entity could go out and say, look, I want 1 million XRP next March or what have you. And I think that's an important thing to understand through all of this, because, as we see, as you really, obviously, you have brought an enormous amount of clarity. I told you yesterday when we spoke, I absolutely got lights coming on in my warehouse. I mean, it's unbelievable. But I think it's important to understand that that is a key part of what they're doing. So if you understand the quarterly report, Crypto Eddie, who's in Japan, has an XRP channel. She's fantastic. She shouted us out for our interview today. And she also broke down the quarter one report and said it was like at the rate that they sold currently, it's another 200 and some odd months, at that pace before it would go away. And I think that was accurate of her to say, but I also think it's important to remember about escrow that there could be portions along the way here that are allocated for entities like banks who understand we're not going to be like the record company. Put us on the till, we're going to get our blockchain together and all our this together and get their stuff in-house together. But it's waiting for them at a certain point as well. So is that a little too optimistic, or is that fair to say?
So let me expand on that a little bit, but that's generally fair to say. And that's one of the amazing things about these escrow features. So let me give you just a little bit of background. I don't know how much time we have here.
I'm open. I've cleared the afternoon. So is whenever, obviously whenever you're ready, we can do a wrap. It's up to you.
Okay. So escrow was actually not created for what everybody sees it being used for now, the most prominent use case, which is Ripple's escrow of its 50 billion plus XRP. It was actually created as a synchronizing primitive for ILP transactions. And so there's two types of an escrow transaction says, I'm the person who used to have this XRP. Here's where the XRP is going to go, the person it's going to go to next.
Right. And
it then has a condition on it. It says, right now, I have a condition. If this condition is true, the person receiving the signs this particular contract.
Right.
Then deliver this to that person. Right.
Right.
It also has a timeout on it, which says that person has to deliver this condition to receive the XRP before a certain time.
Okay.
And if they don't do that, the XRP goes back to me. Right.
Got it. Yeah.
But before that timeout, I can't reclaim the XRP. I can't renege and take it all back.
Right.
That's what makes it an escrow. And so all of that's visible on the ledger. It's very transparent. So of the original 55 billion XRP that the company locked up, it's staggered to come due according to the original rules that I remember, right? If I miss any details, forgive me. But what they said was, okay, there's 55 billion. We would like to have access to about $1 billion a month just in case.
Sure.
And so they locked it up in 55-ish escrows.
Yeah.
Right? Of 1 billion each. Mm-hmm. And then they staggered the expiration dates of those so that they would come due one per month.
Right.
For over 4.5 years or whatever 55 months is, right? Yeah, yes. Roughly somewhere in that.
Yeah.
And then what happens is, so one of those escrows was going to come due 1 month out, the next one 2 months out, the next one 3 months out. They're all staggered like that. So if they didn't, once the escrow becomes available, they can sell it or use some of it. And then anything they don't use, they lock up in a new escrow that's 55 months out, basically, right?
Right.
And it just keeps rotating like that. And so everybody can track when this is available for sale and when it goes. So all of those Ripple escrows have no condition on it. There's nothing the company can do to renege and say, we're going to take all of this and dump it.
Right. Which is awesome to know. Yeah.
And so let me take this back to paranoia, right?
Yeah.
So right from the beginning, from 2013, the company has always said, we're never going to do that. How is it possibly in our best interest to dump all of this and crush the price, right?
Right.
And everybody went, no, we're paranoid. We don't believe you. And so once they put that into escrow, everybody went like, oh, well, we don't have to trust you. We trust the ledger, this mathematical thing that you completely created, right? And but we trust that, right?
That we
the
trust.
imaginary man in the sky.
That's right. That's funny.
Which is awesome. That's what cryptocurrencies are for. But I'm like, it's not like anything changed in what the company has ever said.
Yeah.
It just, the transparency changes everything. Right? Everybody can watch. There's no backroom dealings. So what you are suggesting is on the market report, they say we sold this much here.
Right.
When people hear that, they go, oh my God, somebody's going to crash the market. They're getting special prices and they're going to dump and they're going to force the price down. That's never in Ripple, the company's best interest.
Exactly.
Right? And, they, to my knowledge, I can't speak for everything the company is doing, but you can't sell it cheaper.
Right.
Like that's a taxable event for everybody. It's a general pain in the ass.
David Schwartz, to your point, has came out and made that very clear too. He said the price of XRP is the price of XRP. So the only advantage really is being able to get large sums of it for a flat rate, whereas if you bought it on exchange, you'd have to buy out the buy and sell walls, right?
Now the way I understand it from reading things David said and the company's published is there's strings attached to that, right?
That's right.
And that's what you're referring to.
Yes.
So there might be a lockup period like you're referring to that
Exactly.
says, okay, we're selling you this now and it's absolutely yours. And we're recording that on the ledger, but it's escrowed unconditionally for a year or 2 years.
Right.
And you will be able to look at the ledger and see those transactions. And you'll see an address. If there's an address that says it came from Ripple and it's going to somebody else who's not Ripple for delivery in a year or something out of a certain amount,
right?
Maybe that was one of those deals. So you're seeing half of the business transaction. You're seeing the money being allocated and it's going to be delivered in the future to somebody. But you don't know the other terms of that.
Right.
Right?
Sure.
That's private. It would be awesome if everybody could see all the terms of that.
Well, and I understand it.
Yeah.
Contracts are contracts. They're between the two people they belong to be between. Yeah.
And so the nice thing, like a feature, let me just throw in one other feature.
Sure.
The escrow is a transaction that goes on to Ripple, and transactions have memo fields and invoice IDs and things. And so let's say there is a contract that both parties signed
right
for that's a part of it. You can actually take that contract and hash the paper contract and put it in the memo field of that. Now it's completely opaque to you and me and everybody seeing that out, but it's a reference to the paper contract. So now if there's ever a court battle that says you promised to do this in exchange for that, you didn't do that, you have proof on the ledger that you can say, here's the exact document we all agreed to because we put it in this transaction.
Exactly.
Right? And so that's the technologies of blockchain that we're using that are not a chain in themselves.
Right.
And so I don't know if they're using that for escrow, but if you're looking for a new business and you're trying to be transparent and confirm this and do that, that's a tool that is available for you to use.
Right. That's incredible. Yeah, I think that's a much better understanding for a lot of people out here who either didn't understand it, just didn't know it, or just didn't understand it, one or the other. And thank you for that, for touching on that. So I think the other thing we were going to talk about is NASDAQ talking about having a price tracker for XRP. But they're basically, that was an article that had suggested that they would be next to follow Bitcoin Liquid Index and a Litecoin Liquid Index. We'll have to see what takes place in that, as far as that. We do know that Cryptopolis had mentioned, or it actually had caught them paper trading Bitcoin and Litecoin under some fictitious symbols. So that was very, very positive, just to give to the audience about where the direction of the market is. One of the things I try to do here, Bob, on the channel is is to really show movement of the development of the crypto space. I constantly try to focus on the traditional names, market makers, right, that are coming into the crypto space, like Fidelity partnering with Coinbase. Those kinds of things, when you see that, knowing that ErisX and Bakkt are sitting on the sideline trying to get the custody issues straight so they can go. Because this is traditional side melding into the crypto space, which is going to really make it that legitimate digital asset or a brand new commodity in the world.
It is, and I have no specific information on the NASDAQ stuff. But let me tell you how I view, when I read news like this is the way I overanalyze it in my head. There are people in the crypto space who think of themselves as futurists, and they're encouraging, this new vision out there, and they're trying to attract people in to the market.
Yeah.
There are people in the traditional financial markets that are like that too.
Right.
NASDAQ is not one of those. Right.
Right.
So NASDAQ, as a rule, these indexes and other organizations like that, they don't go, hey, here's a new company, let's list them and see if people come, right? They're not a marketing organization. That's their business. That's not their business. They're responsive to their own customers. So if you start to see legitimate news or rumors about NASDAQ considering doing something like this,
right,
the thing that happened before is NASDAQ saw legitimate customers asking for things like that.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
They're not speculating. NASDAQ's not speculating, going, oh, let's leak out this rumor and see if our customers say, hey, thumbs up. I'll vote that out.
Right.
They're responding
to a demand.
And so whenever you see an organization whose own internal marketing is based on being very stable, very conservative, very infrastructural, we're a foundation that the country's whole economy is built on.
Right.
See them as responsive to customer demand, not speculative, trying to attract customers with those releases. And so that's the way I analyze it. And I never analyze it of, they're going to suddenly, it's going to go boom when they do. They're what NASDAQ, if they're really working on that, and I can't even say that they are, because you told me.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, dig it. Yeah.
NASDAQ is going, well, there's these other competitors to NASDAQ, like the New York Stock Exchange, and, more than I'm sure I don't know in foreign lands, that might do this too.
Yeah.
And if we lose our advantage there, we're going to look like idiots. Why is, one of these foreign exchanges the go-to place for all of this information?
Exactly.
It would. And so,
go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
That's how I see it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so, it's interesting to me because going to another topic, futures contracts, XRP futures contracts, right? We know they're sold everywhere in the world except the United States currently, right? So that's really and I'm sure that's a legislative issue, obviously, that hasn't been approved, that clarity's not there for that to happen, I'm guessing. So I've always told people to really look towards that for signaling that is a huge signal to when they bring those in the United States, whether it comes behind legislation or regs in some area, because I understand that when you start building these products like futures contracts, ETFs and the like on top of an underlying asset, that's when you get that cohesion of regulation from the CFTC and the SEC, because they get back in the game with third-party products on top of the asset itself. So I've always told people to look out for that to start to show itself, because if that really starts to show itself, you know that that is going to be a key signal for institutional money and market makers hugely coming into the market, in my eyes, because this is what they want to see. The CEO from ErisX has said clearly he wants to see the price discovery move off of the asset itself and onto the futures contract market, where they can get the, daily, bi-weekly, monthly, quarterly contracts and find price discovery through those products and not the actual asset as it is now. And I just look at that as like one way to see how young we still are as a market.
Yeah, absolutely. And I am not an expert by any means in these markets, but I think that's a very sensible analysis of this. The futures or finances, the stuff I've learned is just absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
The way smart people have learned to make money in here.
Yeah.
And futures are a really, really interesting tool. And so all of those tools are there to help what people call finding the real price, right? And so what is the real price? The real price is what it would be if it wasn't going like this, right? And so a futures is a tool for taking volatility out of the market, because as it starts to spike above the real price, these guys cash in these other type of options things, and execute and take the profit out and bring it back to the real price there. So and of course the thing that makes those go live is customer demand, right? There's a lot of fancy Wall Street trader types that are always looking for a way to make more profit doing what they already do, right? There's people that do those options tradings in Forex and in stocks and in other things, forcing things to the right price. And as long as there's a new thing that we don't know the right price of, there's other people ready to jump in and be the first ones to do that, because that's where the most profit is.
Yeah.
When it's once you get more competitors doing the same thing that you're squeezing the profit out of doing that.
Yeah, and it creates more liquidity layers too at the same time, right? Because we're talking about, like, just as an example, gold does about $100 billion a day in business on the asset itself, but the products that are sold on top of gold, futures contracts, swaps, ETFs, and the like, do about $500 billion a day. So there's another level of, price action and liquidity that happens just by the products themselves. And obviously these are the products that the large institutional market makers and stuff are used to using to make money.
Yeah, exactly. And they're really, really good at it. So that's what I'm looking to see. And I know there's discussion going. There's been press releases about Ripple talking to people like this in the past. And continuing on, I'm absolutely sure Miguel Diaz has all the sorts of connections into those areas, commodities, and other liquidity arenas. Yeah. So I know. I hate to say I know, because it sounds like I'm authoritative. I'm no longer authoritative on immediate Ripple stuff.
Right.
I know the people inside the company know these things. Right. And they're not dumb people. So I personally expect they are exploring every opportunity they can to, with everyone they can. And they have a remarkable number of doors open. What I saw being inside the company, and I will leak out non-secrets,
of course,
but Ripple was a small company. I was employee 10, up through, say we're employee 50 in there. So these are small businesses from U.S. standards and most everybody's standards.
Sure.
So I'll leak out something slightly in confidence, but I don't think it's that secret. Marcus Treacher used to work at a big bank, and you guys can Google which big bank he worked at.
Sure.
There. But he told me, he's like, yeah, when I was working there, I had 10,000 people reporting to me. Like, what?
Staggering.
And so, I'm working for a company with 50 people, 100 people, right? Yeah. And we hired a guy that had 10,000 people reporting to. But what I want to say is the doors were opening for us to talk to people in banks at a very high level, at the level of people have tens and thousands of people reporting to them. We're not talking to vice president in banking is not a super influential term. That's pretty middle there. It's a great term, but it's like, you want managing director level, you want higher level. But when we're a company of Ripple, 50 people, the doors are opening to talk to people we have no business talking to.
Right.
And so those conversations started seriously and very early for us, and they're continuing. And everybody likes to think, oh, they're talking here, click, and it's going to happen. But you're always talking to a person in this place, and they're always solving a particular problem. And nobody's looking to make you rich, right? Everybody's looking to make themselves richer or more profitable or whatever. So, it's nice to think suddenly, oh, we're talking to these big banks, and suddenly, boom, we're giant and playing in their leagues. That's not the way they see it. They're like, good, you promised us you're going to earn us more profits, be more secure, be faster, access, speed, certainty, cost. Tell us how that works.
Right.
And the reason I can explain it so well is purely trial and error.
You've had a lot of time to work it out, right?
Yeah. I've explained it to a lot of people, and then they're like, hey, but what about this?
Right.
And so what I've learned is like, oh, okay, don't say that.
Yeah, go another way.
Over that wrong.
Yeah.
And so I spent a lot of time talking to people. Just if you want, anecdotal backstories, when you do deals, business deals,
right?
There's always like the grown-ups talking, like the people higher up that are talking, saying, good, how are you going to make us money? What is your value proposition? Who might customers get that are going to benefit? All of those done. But at some point they go, hey, this sounds good. Now, here, one thing.
Right.
I want my technical team to talk to somebody in your technical team so they can tell me if this is real or not, right?
Right.
That was my job.
That's incredible.
So it's like my role was, okay, now we got them really interested. Don't screw it up.
Yeah.
Right.
Keep them there. Keep them there.
Yeah. So people come in and quiz me. It's like technical Jeopardy every single day. And then I have to make it real, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so my job was explaining to them, and they go, okay, this is totally real, on with the deal.
Right.
But I really couldn't, it's not my job to go out and make more deals or attract more customers.
Right.
I can only screw them up.
Right.
And so 5 years at Ripple, that's my track record of not screwing up too bad.
Right. Yeah. That's amazing, man. That's amazing. So, Bob, how about we just try to field a couple questions that I've had from viewers and audiences? How do you feel about that?
That's great. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so one of them I had here was from Johnny Bull XRP, if he's in the stream. And you may or may not know these, and you know what I mean? So you just answer it, at will, obviously. Can Bob Way ask him about the specifics of XRapid Payments actually pulling orders from live order books from preferred exchanges like Bitstamp? So I guess I get the notion he's wanting to know is XRapid currently sourcing through Bitstamp that you may or may not know of at the moment? And you're obviously not at Ripple anymore, so I wouldn't expect you to know that, but you may have something to add.
So I can talk about the original implementations and intentions when they were doing that.
Right.
And yes, they do pull from the live order books.
There you go, Johnny Bull.
My camera's kind of there. So what happened was, personally, I think the XRP ledger does everything way better. The XRapid goals, if we did it entirely on the XRP ledger,
Right.
I think makes a much better, more consistent implementation. But owing to previous decisions that were made at the company where we didn't make it easy for people to use the ledger, and as the gateway thing became regulatorily difficult, people sort of migrated off of the ledger, the exchanges in the ledger and the gateways to existing exchanges. So one more. So when it came time to do XRapid, you have two possibilities. Hey, we could use it on the XRP ledger, but there's no people there and trading there, right? So even if there's a possibility, the spreads are like this big, right?
Right.
And then there's the existing off-ledger exchanges where people are trading every day and the spreads are this big.
Exactly.
So which we're going to use? The ones with the spreads this big.
Yeah.
And so what happens is, they do use those existing exchanges. It's actually a much more complicated bit of technology because now we're having to synchronize other people's technology
to that
wasn't designed to be synchronized. We're having to add those features on it.
I can only imagine.
Rather than the XRP ledger, which was designed from the get-go to synchronize.
Absolutely. So that's a great question, Johnny Bull. Thank you, Bob, for that. So going to the next question, and we may know the answer to this already, but I just want to acknowledge him. We Fly High 95 wanted to ask Bob has insight on current users at the moment and if they have a real interest to use XRP in the future. Now, if I understand that, Bob, that Dilip Rao has said from Ripple that the path is, one, get them using the software. 2, get them using XRP as a liquidity solution, and then the holy grail is to get them to hold XRP. Is that pretty much, I think, covers the path of that, right? So it's more savings if someone's going to hold it as opposed to whether they would use it. They may save 20-40% by current. They may save 70% if they hold it themselves. Is that a way to look at that?
Right. Yeah. In general, that's correct.
Okay.
When I hear the words like customers, then I always, you have to qualify that.
Right. Yeah.
So
exactly.
So XRapid as a product name started out as the product for remittance companies and money transmission companies, not for the banking
right
companies, right? And like we said, that's two different tiers across. They all go from Alice to some Bob.
Right.
What are you squawking about? Come on, come sit with me. We're gonna talk. Janet disappeared, so there's nobody to wrangle the birds. Sorry about that.
Oh no, it's all good, man.
And so it started out as that tier, but of course, from the beginning, I'm trying to get them to market it as the liquidity solution because that's what it was. And so they actually have done that now in the media to say, hey, XRapid is a liquidity solution for everyone, not just for the remittance and money transmission companies.
Right.
And so, but let's talk about Alice and Bob at the customer level. And you say, do those customers want to hold XRP? No, Alice wants to send money to Bob in whatever Bob wants. Alice doesn't want to know anything about XRP.
Right.
Do the money companies, do the remittance companies like Western Union-ish, not Western Union, but the ones you'll see in the press releases.
Right.
Do they want to use XRP? Oh, no. They want to take fiat currency from Alice and they want to assure that it gets delivered to Bob, wherever that is, and they want to do that cost effectively and profitably. And if they can find a really cheap way to do that doesn't use XRP, they'll do the really cheap way that doesn't use XRP because it's a profit deal, right?
Exactly.
They're doing that. But their current paths are more expensive than the XRP path. So they're using the XRP path. And so, yes, those sort of people, if they think they can squeeze more profit out by holding XRP, absolutely they'll do that.
Sure.
Okay. Sorry, one more. We're going to have to do this. You stop it.
I love it.
So that's his signal for he's being too noisy.
Right. He gets the
and
old
I'm not
blanket.
sure what he's asking, saying, "Pay attention to me."
Yeah.
So they'll do it, but that's exactly it. Is as they see that they're turning profits using the system through other traders' money, and if they start to see, hey, we could squeeze some profits out of those traders and take it for ourselves, then yeah, absolutely, they'll do that.
Right.
Right. And the same's true for banks when they're doing it, and other people. What's the driving force? It's always a profit deal.
Right.
I occasionally link that Steve Martin video from The Jerk.
Oh, I love that movie.
It's a profit deal.
Yeah,
It takes
right.
all the pressure off.
What a great movie.
And so, you don't have to over-analyze any of these things. You just have to look at it and go, more money, less money, they're going to go that way.
Right.
Right? It becomes very, very simple.
Exactly. Okay, so I have another question from Mike. Mike wants to know if you can elaborate on Codius. This seems to be a smart contract level capability for XRP. It seems the progress is slow, but with derivatives market, this could be huge. Your thoughts, Bob?
Yes.
There you go, Mike.
He's right.
He's right.
That's
Right. That's good.
So yeah, Codius is this is the trouble with calling it the XRP ledger and XRP here. Codius is a smart contract platform, period, end of story.
Right.
And it's designed to work great with XRP. It's designed to work great with everything else too.
Right.
And it's designed especially to work great with these sort of ILP transactions where we're synchronizing different things.
Right.
And so it's also designed to work at scale with no ties to existing blockchains. So if you look at, just by contrast, Ethereum and say Enterprise Ethereum,
Okay.
you can write great contracts in there, but they're contracts that work best for manipulating things that are on the Ethereum ledger.
Got it.
That belong to the contracts,
Right.
Essentially, right? And so that's awesome. They're not terrific at manipulating Bitcoin, which is on a totally different ledger,
Right.
or Litecoin or XRP. And why? Let's talk about why they're not terrific at that. Because in order to move the Bitcoin, you need the secret. You need to sign the transaction.
Right.
And the smart contract itself on Ethereum is a public object. Anybody can take it and download it. Anybody can look at all of the data
Sure.
that it's using to make its decision. So if you try to put the secret there, everybody goes like, "Oh joy!
Yeah.
Here's the Bitcoin secret. Off with the Bitcoin."
Right.
Right. And so that becomes a problem. Now, I'm not saying these guys haven't addressed that now. I haven't, I came in at the very beginning of Ethereum. I'm sure everybody's coming up with new bits of technology to
Sure.
get around that solution. But that was how sort of Codius started. It said, okay, what if we want to manipulate things that aren't, what if we didn't put the contracts on a blockchain,
Right.
but we wanted to manipulate things that are on any blockchain or any other ledger? What would that look like? And so they can run, what Codius is a system that says, here's the code that's running. It's running on a third-party host that's not involved, doesn't have a vested interest in any of the stake of the transactions that are being manipulated.
Exactly.
For example, Google, right? Google or Amazon, the cloud service host, they get paid just to run code.
Right.
They don't care, if the code's moving money or what the value is.
Sure.
So we go, we just let them run it. They'll tell us what's running, and then we can hide some data. And we don't want to give the whole secret there,
Sure.
but we could do multi-sign, right? We could put it on Amazon, we could put it on Azure, we could put it on Google Cloud, we could put it on 5 different clouds and say 3 out of 5 multi-sign have to do this, and then if any of them lose their keys, we can reset them, right?
Right.
And then we have a collaborative contract system there, and then anybody can do that. And the main thing about Codius is these contracts don't overlap in resources on the machine. So every contract running on Ethereum competes with every other contract running on Ethereum for CPU use and disk space and all of that.
Okay.
And Codius is designed to do contracts that aren't competitive like that.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And they don't have to be public, right? I could do,
Right.
Here, you and me, Brad, we have this contract to do this business deal, and we know it's running, and we put it in Amazon's cloud there, and we're going to interact with that because I'm paranoid and I don't trust you.
Right.
But we don't have to tell the world that that's running, right? That's not,
right.
Everybody's going, hey, why did Bob and Brad do this contract thing?
Gotcha. Okay, so that's fantastic. So also have, let's see, Sean W, aka Worthless Fiat. So this guy's all in on digital currencies. Please ask Bob, what does he think of decentralized oracles like Chainlink, and does this compete with XRP? Chainlink does work with Swift. Let's, if you have anything to add, if you do, you know what I mean?
So, boy, a lot of these topics I'm talk about in the study group, because most people don't really understand what Swift is. Swift is email.
Right.
Right. And so, yeah, lots of things interact with Swift and send email messages here, and that's good. And I don't really know that much about Chainlink.
Yeah,
but
neither
by
do
the name, I can presume they're trying to link different chains together.
That's
right?
Yeah, buddy.
And that's not a bad thing, right? I'm good at analyzing because I know needs and technology and how they come together.
Sure.
And I'm saying that's not a bad thing, but I don't see things necessarily as competitive there. So, for example, JP Morgan coin, right?
Yeah.
That, it sounds like, oh my God, that's super competitive. JP Morgan coin is $1, right? It's $1 held by JP Morgan, issued by that. Exactly. Who's going to use that coin? It looks like from the stuff that I've read, JP Morgan and their foreign respondent banks, right? But, banks that use JP Morgan as a correspondent, as a dollar clearer.
Yeah.
So, if I'm a big bank in this country and I need to move dollars to a big bank in another country, the dollars are held by JP Morgan and they move them back and forth. Right. JP Morgan is not the only bank in that space. There's like BNY Mellon, there's Bank of America, they're all in that space and they're competitive. BNY Mellon and JP Morgan are competitive. All of them are competitive with BAML, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and probably other names I'm not even mentioning.
Sure.
Those banks are all competitive for this, and that's a one-upmanship on JP Morgan's part with let's call it with Mellon, right? BNY Mellon or Bank of America. They're like, here, we're the thought leader. We have this tech. We're trying to attract your respondent banks to our system because it's going to be cooler, even if it's not yet better or faster, or maybe, it has these new features. But those are dollar to dollar transactions. Those are not cross currency transactions. And so it's not competing directly with what we're trying to do with XRP. And so what ILP and these technologies can do is, sure, maybe we're moving dollar for dollar from one bank to another on this ledger, but we need to synchronize that with cross-currency transactions to a third country here.
Right.
And so that will be using ILP technologies and the XRP ledger technologies to synchronize all of those bits together. So these things are ILP, everything Ripple's done on ILP is based on the notion that nobody is excluded.
Right.
We're actually connecting everybody together. And whoever has the best technology for their particular business use case, we want to connect them in for that business use case. Absolutely. And synchronize it to the people with best technology for the other use cases.
Yeah.
And it's all about creating circular transactions among all of those technologies that help people do business faster, the whole circle faster.
Right. That's incredible. That's incredible. Okay, so take one more here, see if we can get this in. Cody, for Bob, you mentioned that commodity, anything tokenized can essentially flow through XRP Ledger. Can you speak to how this works at all? Will we see a global XRP Ledger marketplace, STOs, goods, services, etc.?
Well, I can explain it. I don't know STO, goods, services. What happens is you have a business and you want to offer some service. So I'll do the Wayback Machine because we're talking commodities.
Right.
A company, if you search the press releases, you can find it. So not giving away secrets. Gold Bullion International, GBI, they sell gold, right? And they also have a big vault, I believe in New York City, where they hold gold.
Yeah.
And they said, hey, we'd like to sell gold on the time it was the Ripple ledger, the XRP ledger.
Right.
And so they have an address whose name is GBI or on there that represents them.
Right.
And they sold gold in ounces, in coin. It wasn't a coin; it was in like an ingot ounce there.
Right.
And they listed it on the ledger, for a dollar price. I forget which dollars they used. So you could just go, I have these dollars at one of the gateways, like Bitstamp at the time or SnapSwap, and I want gold at GBI. And you would just do in the client, and then you held gold. And then you could deliver that gold in ounce units to anybody else or in fractional ounces, which GBI doesn't even offer. Right?
Right, exactly.
And so I actually, as one of the projects we worked on, we did a pilot debit card very early on, 2014 was the first one ever, that was bound to, the swipes of the debit card were bound to your address on the Ripple ledger, the XRP ledger.
Wow.
And so I actually bought cheeseburgers from McDonald's using gold, right? And works just fine.
Just fine, right?
Yeah. And tacos from Taco Bell, and I really don't eat that well, but yeah, they are yummy, right?
Yeah,
but
if it's good, it's good.
The cashier who I handed the card to didn't know the difference.
Yeah, right.
But I knew that the account that got debited for me was gold, and they got credited in dollars just like they wanted. And it happened all in real time while I'm waiting at the drive-through window. Awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome.
And so, yeah, if you wanted to do the same for gold, there was a guy very early on who did. I don't know that it's common knowledge, but there's a whole community of people that like silver and do day-to-day business in silver. But silver, one of the most easy to get and defined quantities of silver is old U.S. currency, like U.S. silver quarters and dimes, things. So they just use those,
right,
at the silver value price when they do transactions. Very John Galt kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so a guy said, hey, I've got a bunch of silver dimes. I'd like to put them on the Ripple ledger. So we created a currency called DYM, dime, that was worth one silver dime. And you could buy them for any of the other things that people were trading them for. And if you actually wanted to redeem it, you could send it back to him and he would mail you a silver dime.
Wow.
He would even pay postage on it.
Dang.
And if you had your own dimes, you could mail them to him and he would credit them on the Ripple ledger and you could trade them like anybody else.
Wow.
And that, your legal mileage may vary, consult your own thing, but this was early on. So people just said, this sounds like fun. I'll do that. They didn't go, oh my God, how many state regulators do I have to contact to issue dime on the ledger? Because the regulators would have gone, huh?
Yeah, we'll say what? What do you want to do? Yeah, without our oversight, how about it? Okay, so Bob, I think we've got enough questions there from the audience that I put together for us today. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That's a nice revisit from 3 years ago from Bob Way. And again, I hope we get a chance to talk to him in 2023, especially after we get a ruling in this case, or at least lead